Okay, warming up. Test mic audio. Okay, audio levels are moving. If you're watching and you are watching the recorded version of this live stream, feel free to jump forward in time to the start of the show. If you're watching right now during the stream, we will start in a few minutes. We're just manually sharing the links.
Mm-hmm. As I'll put a reminder live stream. So yeah, as it is a live stream video, then these things are more fun with people watching. So we need to give time for people to catch up from their busy lives and tune in.
Okay, I can see the YouTube stream. We're sharing the link now to Twitter.
Yeah, I'm just copying stuff over also to Twitter. So I don't have my YouTube studio up. So give us a moment.
We're sharing links. Okay, I see us on Facebook as well.
And I see you shared to the group.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get notified when you notified FGTC.
Oh, wrong group.
But yeah, if you want to get notified as the streams go live, then we have a Facebook Messenger group that you can ask us about. Easiest way is to direct message us, and we'll get around to it, whether Facebook or Twitter. I always offer up Twitter because it's the easiest way to connect because it's one directional following and all that stuff. You gotta admit, Twitter, uh, it's the main benefit and main challenge of Twitter is that it's either you're public or you're not, and private Twitter is very quiet, very very quiet. Why are you replying to me on Twitter now in the middle of the show? That's Toby for you. Always time for snacking.
Mm-mm.
I should bring up also. Uh, we're just prepping stuff also in the background.
Mm-mm.
Wow, I'm getting a little overwhelmed by the number of toy lines we're going to be covering. Hey, Andre, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk about many of them briefly because I don't think we know the toys well enough. But I think I know the cartoons a bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've seen all these incarnations.
And then the movie, and then but yeah, we'll discuss it.
Yep, yep, yep.
Well, we might as well get started.
Okay, I will get credits rolling.
We still have a lot to do for the rest of the night.
We have to finish another episode of Crash Landing on You. Okay, we'll be right back.
Oh yeah! Really great!
This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, our little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
It's completely unscripted and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us as we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. We probably have around 10 active viewers who watch at different points in time. But hey, at least we have viewers.
We
Um,
appreciate you who tune in or who catch up on the show, even if you watch it when it's not live.
or watch it as a podcast in the background. That's totally fine.
Yeah, that works out. So, all right. So today's topic started with what can we talk about that has a tiger, and the closest I could get was Cringer. Hey, Chinese New Year, Year of the Tiger. Cringer is a large cat, but is green, kind of a tiger. And then, also because this in the last week, there was confirmation that the Masters of the Universe live action movie, which has been in development at Sony like since 2007, I think, if I read that right, is finally heading to Netflix to become a thing with a guy named Kyle Allen set to play He-Man. And that oddly inspired me to say, hey, Toby, why don't we talk about He-Man? But like, not just He-Man, but all the He-Mans.
Mhm.
He-Mans? Yep. Okay, so we're gonna talk about an abbreviated history of the Masters of the Universe franchise. Ooh,
And
it's
of course,
big.
spoiler shark, we will talk about stuff that may spoil plot elements, story twists, and trivia about the topic. So please listen with care.
But in all honesty, most of the plot lines that we will potentially spoil are from the 80s when many of you have not been born because we grew up with these toys. Okay, so how do we define Master of the Universe? Is there a definition? Or are you looking at He-Man as a definition?
No,
I think Master should be the
so
thing.
Masters
Right?
of the Universe was a franchise that was first released in 1981, created by Mattel, with the creators being, I lost the name. I had them already.
There is a great Netflix
Yes, I
documentary
was gonna say.
that covers it. Well, there's the one about the toys that made us, but there's also I remember a dedicated He-Man one. But I would like to remind people that Mattel is the same company that brought us Barbie.
Hmm.
And it was clearly an answer to like we already have this great line of toys for girls, then we needed a counterpart for
And
guys.
it's because the franchise did start out as a toy line.
Yes.
The franchise started out as an attempt to sell toys, and in their attempt to find a niche that would make it stand out, we have a group of people whose concepts were the roots that formed the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe franchise.
Now this is
Um,
not like super revolutionary. A lot of toys in the late
mhm.
70s, 80s. I mean, a lot of franchise properties were essentially blatant attempts to sell toys using animation.
Yes.
As long as you stick a moral at the end, it's educational and therefore okay and protected by the Children's Television Act.
And I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. I
I mean,
mean, we got some great stuff because of this era.
it also, for me, it also was a, how do we put it? It encouraged creativity
Oh yeah.
rather than just, um, you know, create this toy because it's a rip off of this and sell it. They tried to really come up with
You
original
had to make
ideas, new
stories.
ideas. So you had a group of people who came up with the original franchise concepts, including Roger Sweet, Mark Taylor, Donald F. Glutt, and several other contributors. If you watch documentary, you will see how complicated that backstory is.
Yes, like who did the concept?
Yeah,
Who created He-Man? Is
who
it the
come
guy
who
who
came up?
originated with the idea, the concept art,
Mhm.
the guy who copied something else, whatever?
But there definitely were influences as far as Conan the Barbarian, as well
Even
as
Star Wars,
yes.
apparently. It's a lot of fun stuff. So yeah, there is a lot of
Mhm.
stuff to read up on. So we can fast forward to the fact that then it became a thing.
Yes.
And there are many because of the way that things were launched in the 80s, it was a multi-platform launch,
Mhm.
which is fascinating in itself. So
The
you have the
action,
toys,
yeah, the
yeah,
action figures were 5.5 inch tall, so they were pretty much bigger compared to the Star Wars line, which is like three and three
three and something,
fourths.
yeah.
Whereas the Star Wars line, everyone was nicely slim and looked like they did aerobics.
Everybody had that classic my shoulder is built into my arm
Mhm.
and when you move
My, my
like the whole
my
thing.
favorite was you'd have a peg that had a slide because you needed the
Oh, the
lightsaber to slide out,
lightsaber comes out of your hand.
and then oh, cloth cloaks and capes.
Ooh, Tristan is here, and he shares that his mom had a knack for discovering toys became before they became popular.
Mm.
So he was one of the few people who had a He-Man figure in class. Good for you.
Now, the toy line was also a standout because it did really try to add that dose of action and muscle into the line.
Man, male power fantasy personified in plastic.
A lot of older toys still had everyone looking very slim, very, I dare
Very
say,
doll-like.
very 70s.
Okay,
Wherein
okay.
it's almost like they're all in long pants and bell bottoms and
That's
long
true.
sleeve shirts. Star Wars, even the
Even the old GI Joe
yeah,
line,
yeah,
the bigger GI
and
Joes,
even the male dolls, the
Magos.
the military dolls,
Mm.
the snap. It was only with He-Man that they started to try more sculpted muscles, and not just the men, even the action figures for the women were very, very detailed.
Okay, and although it was funny though that for anyone who played with the original Masters of the Universe toy line,
Mm.
it had the Masters of the Universe chest. Like everybody,
The
almost
same
all the
mold.
toys had the same mold of
Uh-huh.
this super ripped chest. That I don't know. When you look at it now, it's like really this was for kids. But hey,
Mhm.
good job, He-Man.
But given that they were creating concepts while creating the franchise itself, and not necessarily building a world before turning it into toys, you did have, I guess, in lack of a better word, the weirdest mix of personalities and character concepts all in the same show.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from the barbarian guy with the sword to suddenly a guy who has this round piece around the head because it allows them to show a different eyepiece for each side.
Manny face.
And then you'd have
Manny face
suddenly
man.
someone who looks like a merman with scales and stuff.
Because he's merman.
And then flipping it over to a guy in armor. So, you had this wide mix and a variety of different characters. Um, it just really stood out as something very new, very fresh, and very fun.
Now, what I personally loved, which became very confusing later on, is that the
Mm.
He-Man toys, because again, 80s era, multi-platform launches, when you do a toy line, you need a cartoon, but you also need a comic book. And
Mm.
what they did were these mini comics that were included with the figures that could tell these short stories that sort of involve the character,
Yes.
but sometimes he wasn't even like the focus of the story.
Mm.
It was just he was in the story. But funnily, and I found this out because I bought a hardbound, which is the picture I used to advertise today. But I bought a hardbound edition of all the mini comics,
Mm.
and they talked about how they kind of just had their own free reign of what to say, and they did not do any coordination with the people making the cartoon.
Mhm.
So the story in the mini comics had nothing to do with the story in the cartoon, and the mini comics are actually quite very Conan the Barbarian, very
Mm.
graphic, very adult, very almost gothic in some cases.
With the different waves of toys that were released, there was, of course, the need to try to push and come up with more ideas with every line. So, from what was first just concepts of different lines, later evolved to all these little tricks to make the toys even more interesting.
Hmm.
You had that one who you had moving parts, so like trap jaw with his actual trap jaw and his changeable arm appliances, to later tricks which involved little techniques and systems. I think it was Stinkor who had
He had the
scratch.
he had the yeah he sprayed
Didn't
the
but
stink.
didn't have the scratch and sniff furry body.
No, wasn't that Mossman?
Mossman had
He
the scratch and sniff furry
he
body.
smelled like a
Stinkor
deodorizer.
was the water gun style. You had Ram Man, who was literally you press down and then after a few seconds it pops up because he was supposed to be able to launch himself. Um, and then there was that serpent dude who was made of snakes, right?
Wasn't that King Hiss?
Yeah, I forgot his name. But he was like physically he looked like a normal toy, but then you
Yeah,
can
and
pop
then
him
you pop.
open.
He had snake.
And
Wasn't
it's
that, I think that was King Hiss. That was King Hiss of the Snake Man. Okay, Andre is like already asking why was Shira created? Is this an answer to have a female version just like Ken is to Barbie? Ironically, I know it was something along those
so
lines.
She-Ra was an attempt to diversify the line beyond the male traditional action hero. She-Ra comes in around 1984 to an attempt to bring in more female audience members as well. She-Ra was later was supposed to be the long lost twin sister of Prince Adam, living in Eternia's sister planet Etheria. But admittedly, it stood on its own. It didn't need to rely on He-Man.
On the one hand, okay, the Secret of the Sword, that's the big like event that launched Shira
Mm.
coming off of from the He-Man universe, was mind blowing at the time. It was such a brilliant story, and oh my god, I don't know, like I couldn't get over it.
And Shira had the better weapon because her sword could turn into different things.
Yes, it was the more versatile sword,
Mm.
and she had a flying Pegasus. Unlike He-Man, he had Battle Cat, who at
Swiftwind.
best could jump further, and that's about it.
Battle Cat though as a toy was scary amazing because it was like this hard sculpted and you can't like pose him,
Mm.
but then he had that fur quality to him, so
He
that
liked
that
it,
velvet.
and then he had the Skeletor version, the counterpart, who was just
Yes.
purple
Yes.
with a similar velvety
And then they
finish.
had that nice plastic armor that had the straps and stuff, so you were kind of like trying to strap it in, and oh, that was such a
And
good time.
and if you watch that He-Man documentary, I forget if it's still on Netflix, but they were explained that the Battle Cat figure actually didn't even come from.
Yes.
It wasn't really designed
They pulled
originally
it
for
from
He-Man.
they
They
pulled it
pulled
from
it from
somewhere
another
else.
toy line, and that's why it's out of scale. But hey, it's just a giant cat. Okay, Andre, is Shira the origin of the strong, independent woman?
I
I
doubt
don't
it.
necessarily know, but I think Princess Adora was the origin of resting bitch face, because in the animation she had no expression when she was guard captain
Anything would
Adora.
happen, they look at her and she's. But no, I don't think she's the start of the trope. We always will. I will always say we have to look at more than just the popular fiction for stuff like that. There's always real life counterparts that
Mm.
were strong influences for that. But going back to He-Man, the toy line even progresses beyond the little tricks to selling the same concepts but giving them twists. One of my favorites, battle damage, where you would have the chest piece, but then you hit it, it will flip to the next one with a scratch. And then you hit it again, it flips one more time to the one with the three scratches.
Naturally, the main thing I like was from actually the Shira line was the Horde Trooper,
Mm,
because you could press the button and the entire chest plate pops out, which would represent, because they were robots,
hmm
because that was the 80s answers to everything. Like if you were worried about depictions of violence, make the enemies robots.
They also started to push way beyond just the action figures. Everything from the vehicles to Castle Grayskull to Snake Mountain.
To Eternia. Was
Mhm.
this that if you that was like the it was like the grail of He-Man collecting, because there was Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain, and then you could get the Eternia playset, which had like this monorail that connected
The two.
Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain,
Mm.
because hey, it's a world. It always drives me nuts to know all the differences between Eternia, Etheria. It's
So
the naming was
so we
crazy.
had back in our childhood, we had most of the He-Man stuff,
Yeah, Toby apparently grew up in a He-Man
and
household.
and we had the Castle Grayskull,
Mm.
and we got crazy enough to add our Legos to it.
Oh wow.
So we upgraded our Castle Grayskull. I feel so bad we've lost most of it. Ah,
Such is the nature of childhood.
this was one of my favorites. The guy who has
Too
two
bad.
pieces. Yes, yes.
The two-headed guy. So who were your favorite like He-Man characters?
So toy wise, the early one I fell in love with was Trapjaw because it was just such an intricate thing wherein you could move the mouth. So while you're playing, you could have him talking,
Hmm.
and then he had the weapons. Um, and then there was of course Too Bad, who was just
The
interesting
two-headed
and
guy.
fun.
Okay.
And then I'm trying to find it. Where was that other one? Because I wasn't too much a fan of Beastman or there's look at that, it's so awesome.
Trapjaw. Toby's
Yeah.
looking at Trapjaw. Okay.
I wasn't a fan of the girls. Yeah,
Which is essentially Tila and Evil Lynn.
yeah.
And my God, naming someone Evil Lynn, I think was brilliant. Villain names
Mhm.
ever. I mean, I'm sorry. She was born to be evil, and go for it. Can you describe the character you liked? What was the gimmick?
Can't remember. Anyway, but wasn't there a translucent one?
Wasn't that the robot?
Was that the only one?
Roboto?
Yeah, I think that was it.
I know the name. I say, ironically, I didn't have a lot of He-Man toys. looking in the debris of my childhood, I know apparently at some point I owned a He-Man and a Skeletor.
Hmm.
Um,
And then the swords can combine.
yeah, and then
I had the vehicles too.
I had Clawful, the lobster claw guy. I had the Horde Trooper. And I think that's it.
Which one was the one with the head and then the body whips around to keep walking?
Oh, this was that the Strider?
Or was that a different toy line?
No. It's the green dragon thing.
Yeah, that was the other thing I really like playing.
No, that's
I
not
didn't
it.
have the horse.
Look for He-Man vehicles.
Here, this one.
Yeah, that
The
one.
Dragon
Dragon
Walker.
Walker. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I love that Dragon Walker. I would
It
build
was so impractical.
I would build Lego obstacles.
So
And
impractical.
then it would like whip through them as
And
it
then I
moves.
think they explained its main purpose was like because it's the same principle as like a bridge layer, so it could cross ravines. It's like okay,
Yeah.
okay, I'll buy it. I'll buy it. That's the adventure depicted in the mini comic, which I only got to read when I bought the book.
Mhm.
So crazy stuff. I mean, like it was a very very colorful toy line. I think it had a very good run. Okay, so and that brings us to like the next weird era of He-Man.
Was this separate? This was sold separately. Point Dread.
Yeah, wasn't it an add-on for the no for
Oh,
Castle
so we had
Grayskull?
that too.
Okay, so after the main Masters of the Universe storyline, and again calling it Masters of the Universe, super brilliant.
Hmm.
We get a bit of a gap, and then we got well, first we get the Masters of the Universe movie in 1987, which is
Mm.
funny because it came out like after the main toy line ended.
Hmm.
What did you think about the He-Man movie when it came out?
I hated it.
It was so
I
confusing.
hated it because I just didn't feel it was the show.
It
I-
was it was I think one of the first of many examples of let's adapt a children's property into something dark and gritty.
And not really know what we're adapting. So it had that universal key,
The key,
which was played like some sort of musical instrument.
like a bizarre, I don't know, accordion
And I
thing from
and I
hell.
felt slighted because I was like, Pierce Anthony
Mm.
had the skeleton key, which had the twist wherein the key was music as well, and not just the key. So it's kind of like, and then
And Gwildor.
and then they had a Skeletor who you could tell he was a guy under that fake skeleton. So that was kind of that's fake skull.
It's hard though. I mean,
Mhm.
it's hard to not have a.
But like they
fake
didn't even
skull.
darken around the eyes.
They gave him very
right?
human eyes.
So it was like skeleton latex face, but then you could still see him under it. They didn't like even paint the dark of the holes. So that kind of
I was so confused when we were
there.
watching it. Very, very
Because the
confused.
skull itself wasn't bad, but I just wish they filled it up because they did fill up the nose.
But it's crazy that was Frank Langella,
Mhm.
the Frank Langella as Skeletor. Okay, and then and then for the first part of, and then it was one of the our earliest encounters with what was essentially post-apocalyptic fare.
Mm.
And as kids excited to see this movie about our favorite Saturday morning cartoon character, uh it was very jarring.
It really felt like, what is
What
this?
is this? With the most 80s of plots. I
And-
mean, like it's these fantasy characters crossing over to
Mhm.
Earth, and then
Learning about the world and understanding how weird the world is for them.
yeah, and then they sort of get help with the key because of course it's music based, and then our human protagonists are musicians.
Mm-hmm. 80s,
It's like
90s.
including a school official who was running after them for being truant, right? That by that, or I may not even be a school official, I can't remember the movie precisely, but that guy always played a figure of authority running
Mm.
after kids, whatever his name was. I want to look it up. Okay.
And then, despite the wealth of all the characters and concepts that already was present from the toy line, they decided to come up with all these other characters who were not recognizable and just didn't make you feel it was related to the game, to the show. So you had Card, the mercenary. Despite us having a man at arms and a Tila, they did not look like man at arms or nor Tila.
Is this the same guy from Ferris Bueller? It could be, yes, I think so. I think so. Um was this James Tolkien? Okay. And then um
Yeah, James
there are
Dolph.
surprisingly familiar people in this. So again, so number one, Dolph Lundgren. Okay, he was quite an up and coming action
Mm-hmm.
star at the time, and then I feel like He Man was the Master of the Universe movie was like the death knell for his career, and then he got demoted to weird B movie stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Except I think his better works post Master of the Universe was things like Universal Soldier or something.
But then you had, of course, Mattel giving all these guidelines to the movie. He-Man could not kill.
Yeah.
He-Man could not hurt living things, and so on and so forth.
And then okay, Courtney Cox was the leading lady,
Mm-hmm.
and then in which I always get amused when I see this, Robert Duncan McNeil, who is a name that most of you won't care about, but he was Tom Paris on Voyager, and he was the other guy, the other plucky teen. So that was just hilarious to me. That, oh my god, they were all here. Evelyn looked great though. I mean, like she was quite the looker, very evil. Okay.
So the final battle, according to this one website, the duel was unchoreographed and simply shot in front of bright lights. Um, well, it looks like that because it was.
It literally was.
They shut down during the middle of the battle. They told them that it's done, and then they tried to shoot more scenes where they could. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was like the slowest, most careful sword fight ever. Because it was really a lot of like slow swing and touch. The slow swing and touch, which in post was like flashes of light. And yeah, so He-Man movie not great. I don't know why they created Gwildor. I mean, Orko doesn't get as much love as he deserves, and then they created a weird other
Yeah,
alternate
it was
character.
weird that they had to try to populate. I mean, the closest reason I could think of was so they could sell more new toys. But
But they were gonna make movie editions of the toys anyway. We got a movie edition Man at Arms, you know.
exactly, so they should have just stuck to characters'
And then
names.
they were, I guess, they were afraid to go full on cartoon. So then things like everybody was in silver and gray,
Hmm.
and then we didn't get like Man at Arms in green and yellow orange.
And
You
then
know,
we all know Skeletor having his yellow face, skull face, not yellow face. But then in the movie,
potentially
he
inappropriate.
has this point where he has this yellowish golden armor.
Which again felt very 80s. Like many evil bad guys had this transcendence moment in gold, or I don't know. Am I thinking also things like Big Trouble in Little China or something?
Hmm.
There was like the grandeur moment of the villain. So
So it was a miss in most parts, despite having had the potential to be something more
totally didn't
interesting.
help the franchise. And then like the next cartoon follow up we got was the New Adventures of He-Man in the 90s,
Hmm.
which was, let's take our already weird archaic fantasy whatever characters and we put them in the future. So it was He-Man but leaning more science fiction than fantasy. And he was skinny. He was like, He-Man went on a diet. I don't know, but it was like a totally different incarnation. It was just very confusing, very very confusing. Um, yeah, I didn't know what to do with that show. Every time I watched,
I
every time
don't
I
think
caught it, it was like, what the
I
hell
don't think
is
I
this?
watched anymore at that point.
I was just like, it was one of those I was watching, and then like it's only like in the credits roll. Like, wait, this is He Man.
Mm.
It's like I didn't think this was He Man. He's in pants. So skip that. Okay. Then fast forward all the way to the 2000s when they start reviving the Masters of the Universe toy line,
Hmm.
and as a collectible piece, not as a thing targeted for kids,
Hmm.
more for nostalgia. Hey, Mitch. And then that led us to the 2002 He-Man and the Masters of the Universe animated series,
Under
which
Mike Young Productions.
I thought was pretty good. It
Hmm.
was pretty good. They gave everybody what essentially were what we would call at the time modern designs.
Hmm.
Think things along the lines of X-Men Evolution
Yes.
and all these cartoons of the period. But it was actually pretty good. It had a pretty decent story, but it only lasted
2 seasons.
essentially 2 seasons, literally, realistically 1.5, because it was a 26 episode first season and a 13 episode second season. It I don't know, it just didn't quite linger on. The second season got really cheesy because it goes He-Man and the Snake Man. But what else can you do? But it still followed the classic tale of Eternia, He-Man, and all that.
Mhm.
Whatever power fantasy. I felt like it deserved a longer run, but it did not. Okay.
2008 then comes in the classics. A new incarnation of Masters of the Universe was announced, first with the action figure King Grayskull, released in the San Diego Comic Con.
That King Grayskull one.
So the classics was a re-release of many of the toy lines.
Mm-hmm.
All the versions of the lore were included, um, and it surpassed the original toy line in terms of length, running continuously for 7 years with more than 150 figures released following its launch.
Then okay, Super Seven. I don't know if you count because when Super Seven does stuff, yes, it's number one. It's super nostalgia. Number two, they only make things that look like Star Wars,
Mm.
original Star Wars action figures, and it's like designed to look hokey, but that's okay. Then there were some interesting comic books in this period. If anybody takes the time to read, was it DC who had that interesting run? I think. Um, it was a very dark.
Dark Horse, I think, and DC.
Well, there was Dark Horse, then there was DC, and I think I read the DC one, and that was like uh, kind of more adult oriented. It's around the same period that we got things like the more adult Thundercats reboot.
Mm-mm.
It was a little disturbing, but because it's a very compelling story, all these things. So, um, I tried to keep up with it. It just kind of lingered on, but it was like there were some very interesting things, and then you got the weird big DC and He-Man universes crossing over
Mhm.
just so that they could justify two-pack toys of like a He-Man figure and a Master of the Universe figure and a DC figure. That was funny. Okay, okay.
He-Man:
Um,
The Eternity War. That was 15 issues.
oh, that was a good story. I read that. I have that. I have that on digital.
And
Really
then the
good
crossover
story.
specials, He-Man Thundercats crossover.
Yeah, so I said because like that weird thunder, and then there was the crossover with Injustice. Then the Injustice got the toys.
So, come 2018, She-Ra and the Princesses of Power comes out as an animated film.
It was the first of the many, like, which is the new thing now, like, hey, let's put everything on Netflix. So the Netflix group together with DreamWorks Animated
Mhm.
commissioned this series, and I didn't know what to think about it the first time we saw it, and it
Mhm.
was mainly driven by Andy Stevenson,
Stevenson,
who is best known for her comic
Lumberjanes.
Lumberjanes and Nimona, which I still
Mhm.
don't have a copy of. Okay.
So we were cautious about it because we heard from a lot of people that it was really good, and we were still coming from the Steven Universe high.
Mm.
So we jumped in, we're not sure what to expect, and we were blown away how good it was.
Yeah, and I know it doesn't get a lot of love from like Masters of the Universe traditionalists.
Hmm.
I mean, your super bros who only are there for the male power fantasy kind of aspect of this toy line and franchise. But it turned out to be a very fun series, uh, somewhat similar in tone and message as Steven Universe in the
Hmm.
sense that it's like how things will see through, but it was
The power of
naturally
friendship,
more violent
celebrating diversity
because it was
and
still because yeah.
uniqueness, learning to find your place in the world as being among people who are as open as you.
What was I think most fascinating was that at the core of it, more than anything else, was the relationship between Catra and Adora.
Hmm.
Catra being on the side of the villains, and then Adora, of course, being
Hmm.
Shira. Um, it was interesting because Catra was never quite 100% a villain, and it
Hmm.
was just like because of the circumstances that she was in, that's why she's on that side, always looking out for herself. But then
Hmm.
like it was like always this back and forth about them being friends and how do they resolve that given their different views of what should happen for the world.
And then the show nicely touched on even more mature concepts such as trauma, such as um, the way politics can affect friendship and all this and
Mm.
that, without necessarily losing its identity as a show.
Hmm.
So very well done. Um, then Kevin Smith.
Yeah, so we get Masters of the Universe Revelation, which is positioned as a sort of sequel to the original He-Man to the Master of the Universe. Oh, sorry. If it's He-Man to the Master of the Universe, that's a 2000-ish cartoon.
Mhm.
But kind of pushing things forward.
So the Kevin Smith cartoon,
It was confusing at first.
there was a lot of confusion because of one, it was marketed, and there was all this. We're continuing the He-Man saga. We're continuing the story of He-Man.
Playing up the nostalgia, strong 80s rock ballad for the
But
trailer.
then the show itself takes you in a different direction, which wasn't a bad direction.
But it did feel like a bait and switch versus what was
Yes.
advertised. So suddenly you're expecting the adventures of He-Man. Instead, we get the interesting character development
of
of
Tila.
Tila.
And while that story in itself wasn't bad at all,
Yeah.
because of the way it was approached, it felt hard to feel okay with it. In the later season, and it was a later season where
Or essentially it's like one mini series where they
Yeah.
release the first 5 and then the next 5 episodes.
in the later part they have more development as far as Evelyn and the other characters, which again wasn't bad, but it really made you hate how why didn't they just market it to talk about these things rather
Mm.
than try to disguise it as it's all about He-Man.
I will admit though, I mean, one, the thing had a really super stellar cast. You have the likes of Sarah Michelle Gellar as Tila and Lena Headey as Evelyn. And I'll only praise the female voices because as much as I love Mark Hamill, I was kind of distracted by Mark Hamill as Skeletor.
Yeah, I still felt he was still Joker.
You can't unhear him as Joker to
Yeah.
some degree, or like his performance was closer to Joker in that one, but it was okay. So I know. It's like with this series was highly divisive. There's a lot of love and a lot of hate.
Mhm.
I don't think we're strongly in either camp. We appreciated it, but it
Mm.
wasn't quite.
It's not something we'll watch again.
Yeah,
At
like
least for now.
or like I think we still walked away from Shira and the Princesses of Power with such a great. They're like, wow,
Yes.
that's great. That's a nice modern update on it
Yes.
more than this one. So yeah.
Now, around the same year was He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, which was a CGI revival.
This super confused me because Revelation's first 5 episodes had come out,
Hmm.
and then we get this super kiddie series.
Which is super a different direction, which seems to have drawn more inspiration from Sentai
and video games.
than He-Man, and has used the special power of specific characters from video games as cutscenes when they use their special abilities. So it felt
What was it?
very odd.
Like what was one of his main things, like lightning strike or something? I mean,
Yeah.
he does this, then it cuts to this weird sequence where he's running, and then he has to drag his sword.
It was
and then
basically your
summons or your
no, not summons. Your
Limit breaks.
It was your
Limit
limit breaks from Final Fantasy in a He-Man type of cartoon. Literally, we cut to them going through the whole sequence as they charge up that power before they release it.
and it's like always like on this weird theoretical astral plane or
Mm.
something. Like we're on this planet.
But it includes
With no
I
atmosphere?
Swipe, then we cut out to the planet and we see the ray, and then we cut to the. But then we cut back to the scene where it's happening and it's underground. And
Or it's a city.
Yeah.
It's like that was a choice,
Now-
ladies and gentlemen.
given the two, however, the Kevin Smith one or that one, what do you feel should have been like? If there was only one choice and they focused on it more and developed it, what would you have wanted they develop more?
Personally, I think I would still want to invest in the Kevin Smith one.
Because it's still at least
It had an interesting idea, and it really wanted to go. So it needed better marketing. Maybe it needed to flesh out more than just 10 episodes.
Mhm.
And maybe we needed more of the connective tissue. I don't know, because it's quite a jump from like theoretically the end of He-Man versus this, and
Mhm.
but there were some very interesting.
I also
ideas.
felt that way, that the Kevin Smith one felt truer to the franchise. The concept of the other one, wherein they all could be masters of the universe,
Not
was a concept I wish the Kevin Smith one explored. Because the Kevin Smith one did have they were almost hinting that if you had the sword, then you can channel through the power and you can become that master of the universe. So it was not
And
that far from.
and defining Master of the Universe as someone who gets like the power directed at them, not just because the toy line was called Masters of the
Yes.
Universe. Because so technically, Cringer Battle Cat is a Master of the Universe
All the time, and we never realized
because
it.
he gets blasted by the sword lightning thing because
So that was the main plot point of the other cartoon, which I wish they developed in the Kevin Smith one.
yeah, because the other one, like, we share the power and then they turn into like pinballs and whatnot, and then like everybody has weird new abilities.
Okay,
Um,
which is highlighted by their metallic glowing crystal something. So
mhm.
the Ram Man analog had that crystal headpiece. Uh, the Cringer one had the
But not crystal
talons. Yeah.
gems.
Okay, and then now there's discussions of the proposed reboot, which I guess was what we were announcing.
Yeah, so what kicked off this whole line of thinking that this idea, which has been sort of been around since 2007,
Yes.
is finally moving forward. And again, it's Netflix, agreeing to do it, which is like, okay. I mean, I figure Netflix has just doubled down and like, hey, we're going to become the home of He-Man and make the most of it.
So the draft of the screenplay is by David Callahan. David Callahan is known for stuff such as he
the
wrote
film adaptation of Doom,
the
Expendables.
Expendables
Okay.
and the first draft of Godzilla, the rewrite for Ant Man,
Oh, that's
um,
sad though.
Spider Verse sequel supposedly, and Shang Chi.
Well, to write he was supposed to write a screenplay. Okay.
Yeah, and then Kyle Allen, who'll be playing the lead role. He's one of the Jets in West Side Story. He had a recurring role in American Horror Story.
How come I don't
And
recognize him?
I guess that's
He
it.
has a very short filmography, including things so it's listed as One Night XX, All My Life, The Map of Tiny Perfect Things. Then it's suddenly West Side Story, The In Between, Rosalind, The Greatest Something Something.
I don't recognize him. Looking now at the picture from American Horror Story. No.
Yeah, and we haven't fully caught up on the later season, so maybe that's why.
So with this reboot coming, what are you hoping for?
I'm jaded and I don't hope for anything from these things. In a life where we got both Revelations and He-Man and the Master
Mhm.
Universe practically in the same 12-month period. I don't know. I don't know what if there's a plan for this franchise.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it needs to be a unified like cinematic universe, but I kind of just wish that it didn't feel like they were just farming off the property to anyone to make
Mhm.
money off of it. And like because like what happens like Revelations, let's do a fanboy nostalgia thing for the older fans. But then, hey, let's ride on this and get some new kids involved. So how do we get a new audience in? Let's do this video game style thing. And so it's like it you feel the as much as this cartoons or this franchise's origins are tied to toy marketing.
Mhm.
I wish the creative decisions didn't feel like toy
Mhm.
marketing. Like it kind of cheapens the whole experience, and I don't know what to do.
I want it to be something that sort of starts fresh. Not that doesn't necessarily try to connect to the previous works.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't be because Shira was sort of like that. In as much as there were all the nods to the original line,
But it was fresh.
you felt like it was a new story.
That's what I felt about the 2003 He-Man and the Master Universe cartoon. It was
Mhm.
like it was similar but different
Yes.
and refreshing because okay, to its credit, and I say this as a guy who loves Transformers, I have to admit that the original Transformers cartoon was not a coherent thing.
Hmm.
It was episode of the week and then whatever you could churn up. And then He-Man was similar. It was very moral of the week. Who is our featured toy character, and we'll do it. So when you talk about going back to the original series, it's like not the strongest like coherent narrative.
Hmm.
So that's why I like the 2000 something reboot.
I
That it was a
wouldn't.
good direction.
I wouldn't even be against it not being mind blowing as far as the plot, but
They
being.
find mind blowing.
I mean,
Fire truck
yeah, I guess.
with just ringing a bell. Okay. Anyway,
Well, I hope that's not a fire alarm. Um,
That could be a lot louder.
oh, there, we hear the fire
There's
truck
a
now.
proper siren.
So I wouldn't be against it being not mind blowing in plot in the sense of like how Shira really tried to touch on deeper topics and this and
Mm.
that. I'd be okay with it being a action sequence of the week type of show.
Mm-hmm.
Wherein we have the setting, there's the scene, this is the enemy, and then we have one whole episode on how they'll fight that enemy.
Okay.
And then it's just an awesome action sequence of how today is He-Man with Man at Arms, and they plan this strategy that uses technology and his weapons. Next episode, it's him and Stratos, and this time they're trying to use an aerial attack to defeat him.
But
So
that's like a TV series.
yeah, so it would be something similar to how Samurai Jack was in the sense
Okay.
that each story was self-contained. If it were a movie,
It is a movie though. This current project.
it's absolutely a movie.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't aware. Then that's trickier because
You get stuck with origin story again.
yeah.
I mean, it's the superhero movie problem, right? That you need to do the origin story to some degree or touch on it somehow before you
hope they
can get to
don't-
the battle.
I hope they don't bother with the real world.
Yeah, I don't need us crossing over to Earth. That's
I don't
definitely
need
something
it-
I hope for.
I don't need another Resident Evil or another Monster Hunters. Those were sad.
But this is all like Luke Besson, right? What's his name though? Is
Yeah.
and his obsession with that girl, Sally.
'Cause-
That girl.
Well, Resident Evil wasn't so bad if you stop thinking it's Resident Evil.
Yeah.
You think of it as psychic girl against zombies. Woohoo, fun movie. Monster Hunter, I'm not sure how to save you. That was just
That was just
that was a struggle.
that was a series of choices made with a big budget.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you cast
There was some hunting of monsters.
then
Some.
then you cast the non-white actor as a barbaric character who can't speak your language. So yeah, that was quite troublesome. So yeah, I would wish it was all set in that world, had nothing to do with the real world. Please no modernisms. I don't like it when they really force this modernisms, and that's part of the reason why I didn't like the Kevin Smith one, because what's her name was such a valley girl in the world of He-Man.
The best friend, the supposed like
Tila's friend.
audience advocate stand-in.
who
I
was
think.
who was so the smart alecky annoying friend that we see in every modern show.
Mm.
Uh
At the same time, though, like I think I'd like to explore more than there are certain He-Man tropes you always get stuck with, like the sorceress, the magic of Grayskull tied to the sorceress and her
Mhm.
being on the brink of death.
mhm.
It's like part of so many He-Man stories. I would like to have some other end state. I know it's essential and it's core to the franchise that you're always fighting over darn Grayskull
Mm.
and the power, but I don't know. I'm kind of sick of seeing the sorceress in prison and not doing anything because
What-
she's always stuck.
What if they go future? Sorceress is now a hologram. Castle Grayskull is now
I survived the new adventures of He-Man. I can survive anything.
Castle Grayskull is now the metaverse.
Because if they try to say Castle Grayskull as a spaceship, I'm sorry, Voltron already did it.
And then you now have Metator,
What Metator?
the skeleton in the metaverse.
And that's our show. Okay, we got we gotta stop. We must stop the metaverse.
Look, it's the Tome of Power, the Facebook. That's PHASE. Facebook.
No, if we don't get demonetized for that, I will. It's like, what was that?
So thinking of
it's a hard
movies,
sell. It's a
so
hard
thinking
sell.
of movies that have made a remake or have made an adaptation, what do you hope it to be like?
If you want our gold star class for like adaptation things is still like Spider-Man Into Spider-Verse. I just
Mhm.
don't know how to do that. For
But again,
He-Man.
Into Spider-Verse did really create its own.
yeah.
See,
So I feel like if you want to do something, I kind of want, I don't know, it needs its own language. It needs to sell us on a He-Man concept. It doesn't feel too. By now we've seen so many things over and over. I don't want it to be post-apocalyptic. I don't want it to be, I don't know. I mean, I can't get away from the medieval sci-fi fantasy
Mhm.
because that's like core to the brand. Um, But yeah, but I don't want post-apocalyptic.
This is a live action adaptation.
Kaya nga. It's a
So
person who already does not look like he's as jacked as He-Man.
maybe nga they're going for the early 90s, the late 90s one.
He-Man and the new adventures of
Yeah.
He-Man.
Maybe that's what they are
Where
going
where
for.
everybody got more demure. He-Man's in pants, Skeletor has a shirt.
Or he's the new He-Man. Because we'll have the muscle-bound one who will only see in glimpses and flashbacks. And the sword.
Did they learn nothing from Kevin Smith and that marketing drama? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's super early. It's still like, reported in Deadline. It's like casting whatever news, but we don't have anything on plot. We don't know if production is gonna really start. And I mean,
Hmm.
it's like it's just the options have moved around again between studios and potential rights
Oh,
holders.
so what if they do it's a set on Earth? So we have like a battle in Times Square.
I'm probably still gonna watch it, but I'll probably hate watch it. Like I'm gonna watch it to see how bad it is. And that's the thing that in the end we lose. It's like the franchise owners still win because we're still gonna watch it, no matter how bad it looks in the
But what if
trailers.
it's like Bumblebee, the movie?
Hey,
Wherein no,
hey,
what if it does surprise us that way? Wherein it's not so bad after all.
but to get to Bumblebee, we had to survive what 5 terrible Transformers movies, so that when they show us something mediocre, we're like, "This is
The
amazing."
guy's Adam. They're still gonna cast the He-Man.
You think it's gonna be another He-Man? It's
Gonna
not gonna
be
be a CGI
gonna be the Rock.
with his face
It's
on
gonna
it.
be the Rock.
What if it's The Rock but with his face?
No, it's gonna be the Rock with his voice.
No, it's gonna be The Rock but with with the Scorpion King CGI. So authentic. That face is a face of nightmares.
Ah,
So I don't know. There are not many ways that this can go well, but there are many ways it can go terribly.
Hmm.
It's just like a game of pandemic. So many ways to lose, only one way to win. And I don't know if we will find the one way. Yeah.
so as far as we've talked about comics, we've talked about the cartoons, we talked about the movies. I don't recall games.
That was funny, no? Like they didn't have a strong video game presence. But there were some.
So
We
there
were
was a
looking.
Clash of Eternia board game. It's a competitive versus many or fully cooperative board game.
Oh, it's
There's a
Simon.
Fields of Eternia board game.
Or is that just an expansion?
Um, Clash of
Oh, it's
Eternia,
2022. It's not out.
Clash of Eternia's cooperative, critical failures.
Is it re-implementing anything? No, it's
Um,
original system. Who's the developers?
it's got lots of minis,
Of course.
so it does look, it does look interesting. Developers are not familiar to me, but it's common.
Simon,
And
come
then
on.
Fields of Eternia.
It's probably an expansion.
No, it seems to be a standalone.
What?
Archon Studios.
Oh my gosh. Again, it's an upcoming release. So, to answer the question of He-Man board games, apparently someone else decided that, yeah, this is something that's not been happening, so we're going to make it happen.
Yeah, so that's it. There's those two are listed.
Hey, Mark Poa. And
Oh
then
my
it's gonna
gosh,
be
wait, those two are the top listed. So there's a lot of other games that we never knew of.
I figured there'd be like something like a Monopoly reskin or one of those like roll and walk around
So
the
as
board
early
types.
as 1984, there was already a Masters of the Universe board game.
It's tile placement.
Uh, then you had everything from the 3D action game to the Masters of the Universe pop-up games. Of course, there was the RPGs. Um, yeah, so there's a lot more than we realized, and we never really noticed.
But still not as many as you'd think. I mean, okay, like Uno does not count. That's just reskinning Uno. Um,
Yeah, Masters of the Universe RPG, 1985.
wow, I didn't know that.
Strength, agility, intelligence, life force, and magic with movement points.
Oh, totally not D&D. Ooh, they did
Stanleys.
the paper standy foldies like they did with the Marvel superheroes RPG.
So it still had the roots of tactical combat
Yeah,
because most RPGs in the early years were tactical combat based.
because it's still origins from war games.
Yeah.
They were just trying to be faster war games or more narrative war games. Wow, this art, man, it's like bringing me back. Okay. Um. Okay. Oh, FASA. This whole thing was a FASA development.
Oops, we goofed on the magic spells. When you read over the character record cards, you will see that there are spells listed that do not appear in the magic spells table. These spells are for an advanced version of the game and are not used in this game.
That's a cool Easter egg that is on Board Game Geek. Okay.
Huh. Man at Arms had strength 53 and intelligence 62. Ram Man had strength 61, intelligence 16.
Is this a roll under thing? I'm assuming it's a roll under thing. I mean, like, how would I use the stat, right?
Orko had strength 13, intelligence 36, magic 53.
He had more magic than he had the smarts to handle.
He-Man had strength 66, intelligence 53, in agility 51.
He's good at everything except magic.
62. Cars.
So everybody just wants to be He-Man. It's like a Doctor Who adventure where you want
And
to be
then
Doctor
he has
Who.
the special ability strength. Bare hand damage is 8, can crush and hold just about anything. And then his magic sword can deflect any direct magic with a success of 7 or better on 2 dice. I presume that's 2d6.
Yeah, on a 2d6, a 7 actually is a pretty decent chance.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Hey, Mark. So, for those who aren't familiar with those games, there are a number of serial numbers scratched off He-Man related role playing games out there. Um, I guess it's better to just leave it at that and look for it if you want to check them out. But there are different games that offer that experience.
So, what's your favorite incarnation of He-Man? Like what era, or I don't know, or what toy line, or what still feels the most He-Man to you?
Well, I still feel for the classics. Not that I have strong feelings for it, but I guess the better way to say it is the new ones, while I enjoyed watching it, didn't hit me.
Okay.
Didn't have that much of an effect. She-Ra had that effect.
She-Ra and the Princess of Power.
There's new episodes I want to watch. This one was for, okay, let's just get through it.
Yeah.
And while watching, that was an interesting moment there. Oh, that was a good twist, but that's it. It still falls flat. So while I don't have strong memories of the old stuff, I still feel like the old stuff set the bar, and the new stuff haven't beaten it.
Mm. And I guess for you, that's all defined by Trapjaw.
Trapjaw for the toy, but Stratos was kind of hot.
We have friends who also believe this, who have talked about at length that Stratos is hot.
So if the live action movie happens, there has to be a Stratos.
And then who will it be?
Anyone who has body hair and is willing to have feathers.
Body feathers. Because Stratos. And it always amazed me how Stratos could fly, because he really didn't have much in terms of wings. He was mostly muscle.
And then there was that weird thing in my head that I always imagined Danny DeVito whenever I was playing with Raman. I think it was the shoulders or something, but I don't know.
And he was just a spring pop-up guy, right? Which I still felt was better than, I forgot his name.
And it was a hollow toy, so that it would fly up when it launches.
Because I got the later, like, you felt he was a cousin, but essentially, remember those motorized tops?
Mm-hmm.
So I had the guy whose below body was a top, and then the upper body was this really muscular dwarfy guy, and so his main power was to spin, and
although I think
hit things.
Who was the two thing again?
Too Bad. I think.
Yeah, I think I only like Too Bad because he reminded me of Inhumanite.
Yeah, it's Too Bad.
Yeah, I think I only like Too Bad because he reminded me of Inhumanite.
He-Man top figure. No, spinning top. This guy. What's his name?
Yeah, it does look like Raman.
Rotar.
Can you click this one?
Oh, I had I had the ones that turned into rocks.
Yeah, there.
It was terrible because essentially they were doing forward fold in yoga. It was just like I fold forward, I'm a rock, and it was a rock that if you looked under, it was there was a hole on the bottom because they were really just folded over, and it was just a bizarre toy. It was super bizarre.
Yeah, see, Trap Draw so awesome.
Okay, you love Trapdoor a little too much. Oh yeah, see then like toys they criticize Grizzlor. Grizzlor was weird because he was just hairier beast man.
And then Many Faces was kind of fun because you could twirl the top to change his face.
Because he was the heroic counterpart to face Triclops. And then okay, oh on the worst list, of course, we can never get enough of Fisto. Who wants to fist things?
Yeah, this one is cool.
That's Roboto.
I thought, what's a multibot?
No, Modulock and Multibot were the build a figures.
Yes, I like those.
I like those too. I got them because, of course, for me, it was a robot. There, Modulock.
Yes, that one. I love that one.
It was basically a bunch of arms, legs, and things that you put together. See, rock on.
This was freaky. The Ryo Blast.
Oh yeah, because I could not understand the biology that parts of his legs, his thighs folded out and had guns.
They were hiding weapons.
Clawful.
And then Mechanic was just disturbing.
I felt bad for Mechanic because his main power was I can get a bird's eye view. It's
And
like
then-
I'll go taller and I have a
And then you
binocular.
had Squeeze.
All the snake figures were like strange. I think only Kingius like really stands out as doing pretty well for himself in the snake group.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so I think that's about it. So we're not exactly holding our breath for how this new live action thing's gonna go.
No.
I don't know what the future is like. It looks like what the only thing we have to look forward to, sort of, is like a second season of that CGI He-Man's and the Master Universe
Mhm.
cartoon for kids.
Mm-mm.
I don't know what other video game power-ups they're going to develop, but that's probably the only thing we're going to see. Shira, there's no plans of Shira at the moment. There's no more
Sadly.
plans for Revelations. Yeah.
Yeah, that current He-Man thing with the powers, I think they're gonna come up next with a group attack because they kind of were learning to coordinate attacks already.
Oh, that's true. They have to go full Sentai.
Mhm. They'll create the Master of the Universe.
Ah, metaphor.
Hmm.
All right. So that's our show.
That's our show for today. Thank you for watching, everyone.
If you have questions or suggestions for future episodes, you can fill out the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. You can follow us on Twitter, Altobi No Shade, RJ Suniko.
You can also check out our blog, baduypride.com, for all the previous episodes and stuff about us.
Feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below and let us know what your favorite He-Man characters or toys were.
And why is it Stratos?
And be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Toby.
And this is Baduy Pride. Good night, everyone.